This video will deal with stereo reverb. Now, this video is perhaps one of the most important because it can be applied to all of your courseworks, and it should be. Unless perhaps you're working with something like the CUT, which is the Composition with Creative Use of Technology. Now, a stereo reverb is essentially a reverb that is applied to the whole of a project. Now, the reason that you would do this is for many reasons. One of them is in order to save processing space and speed on your computer, so whether that be a MacBook or an iMac, because if you're running several plugins of Space Designer on individual tracks with their own individual settings, that takes up a lot of your computer's processing space, and you then run into issues of crashing and the like. Also, it's for ease of application and use because once you have reverb on a single track to control, you can control the overall level of your reverb by moving a fader, as I will demonstrate shortly, and you can control the amount of reverb that is applied to individual tracks by adjusting send rotaries. Now, the first thing we need to do is to identify those parts that we want to have reverb applied to. And those that we don't are the bass and the kick. And the reason for this is that it helps to control the low frequency content of the mix. So if we were to send the bass and the kick through to our reverb, what would happen is that we would get a lot of low end that is hard to control in a reverb unit because low frequencies take longer to dissipate, to disappear. So we're not going to send the kick and the bass to an auxiliary track. Now, to send a signal to an auxiliary track, what we do is we select undersend in one of the blank spaces and go to bus and then select a bus. So in this case, we're going to go bus 1 because it's empty. And you'll see that an auxiliary track has been created for us. So we're going to relabel that auxiliary track as reverb, and we're going to set the level of that reverb as -10, as we did for our other tracks, to give headroom. Now, the amount of reverb then, or rather the amount of signal we send to that track, is determined by this rotary here. So you can left click and hold and drag the value up and down to increase or decrease the volume, or you can double click and you can set a volume. So I'm going to set this at -10. Now, what's worth noting is that then is -10 decibels lower than the level of the actual guitar track. So that means that a level of -27 dB is going through to this aux track. If I was to set that as 0, you would get -17 going through to that aux track. So if we play this track now and we solo the aux track here, we can hear that guitar. And then if we add the original track, we can hear that it's louder. Now, that portion of the signal is what we're going to be applying our reverb to. So under Inserts, we're going to go to Reverb, and then we're going to go to Space Designer. Now, Space Designer is a convolution reverb, and it works by applying a sample of a reverb to audio. So what this means is that someone has gone out, quite literally, with some form of a tool like a balloon and a pin and recorded the balloon or the object popping in the space, which then results in a bang and subsequent reverb. So there are lots of different presets for different types of spaces, and with this particular recording we could probably start with a room or a hall. So I'm going to go with a room, and I'm going to go with something relatively small, so something like maybe 0.9 seconds. Now, in terms of the reverb time, I would recommend no more than 1.5 seconds of reverb, because when you start to go higher in terms of the amount of stereo reverb applied, the mix starts to get a bit muddy and muddled, and things start to become unclear. So we go for a recording room that sort of fits this style of music, and we're going to, as immediately as it loads up, we're going to increase the reverb level to max. So this will now mean that reverb level will be at -10 dB. So it matches the track fader that you have in your mixer view. So if we solo and listen to that reverb, we can hear that it sounds a little bit distant, and also when you press stop and start, there's a little bit of a delay in the amount of time it takes for that sound to finish. So if we add the original signal, and this is the really important part, we're going to notice that we'll get the dry signal, and we're going to notice that we'll get the reverb as well. And what we're aiming for here with the use of reverb is to make a part sound, or to make the whole mix sound, a lot warmer and fuller, and like it was recorded in a large, in a real environment, in a room. Now, because we've applied only to one part, we need to make sure that application is consistent. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply the same amount of reverb with the same send levels to all guitar parts. We're not going to apply to kick, we're also going to apply the same level to the rest of the drum kit. Now, if we wanted the drum kit to sound a bit more reverberant, we could increase the send level, and then therefore the amount of reverb that we hear of the drum kit would be greater. So it may help it to sound like it's a bit further back. As for the vocal, what we're going to do is we're going to apply reverb. We're going to give it a bit more than the send, so it's a bit louder, so -5 dB. And now we should be in a position where if we solo this reverb track, we'll hear everything as if it were in a room.
Here lies a city on fire, singing along the arsonist's choir.
Now, the really interesting part about this is that if we start to add other parts in, like the vocal, we'll hear a bit of a fullness to the sound, a bit of a difference. So it won't sound as dry, and it will sound wetter.
Here lies a city on fire, singing along the arsonist's choir. Now here I go. It started with a spark and burned into the dark. Now here I go.
And to demonstrate the capacity for Space Designer, we could find something that was a bit longer in terms of its reverb time, perhaps a bit bigger. So if we go with a hall, and we go with a medium hall, and we increase the reverb level to max, and play. Let's take the solos off of all of these parts. What we'll hear is a much larger space, and perhaps a larger difference between the amount of time it takes for the direct sound to hit us, and the reverb sound to hit us as well.
Here lies a city on fire, singing along the arsonist's choir. Now here I go. It started with a spark.
And the more reverb you have, the bigger obviously the space will sound, and the longer it will take for that sound to decay over time. Now, when you are applying a reverb, it will be easier for you to hear the amount of reverb that you have in your own headphones, and also when you're listening to your mix on speakers. And again, try to avoid reverb times that are any longer than 1.5 seconds, and also check your decibel level for the amount of reverb that you have coming in against the dry signal of other parts, because you want to make sure that this is perhaps equal to or less than the loudest part of your mix, which probably should be the vocal. So a few other things to think about, and perhaps different ways to think about this, is that with the stereo reverb we are aiming to apply the dry signal of all of your tracks that you've recorded with a wet signal. That means that a signal that has been affected by a reverb, with your reverb level at full. And again, it's great because it's convenient and it offers you more control over your reverb on a single aux track rather than having to control several reverbs on different tracks. That concludes this instructional video on stereo reverb. When you apply your own stereo reverb, please do make sure that you listen carefully to make sure that it doesn't sound over the top or too ridiculous, and that it complements the music that you're applying it to. Thank you for watching.